I can dump him any time. He's just a wallet I've not emptied yet, Clarissa whispered to her friends, her laughter sharp enough to cut through the night. What she didn't know was that her husband, Derek, was just a few steps away, already setting in motion the kind of revenge that doesn't use fists or fury, but something far more devastating. What happened next shattered her world and will make you rethink everything you believe about trust, loyalty, and betrayal. Viewers, let me ask you this. If you discovered your spouse was secretly plotting against you, pretending love just to drain you, what would you do? Stay silent? Confront them? Or plan a revenge so devastating it leaves them questioning everything? Derek never thought betrayal could wear such a beautiful mask. His wife, Clarissa, was charming, radiant in public, the kind of woman who could command attention in a crowded room with just a flick of her hair. She knew how to smile when people were watching. But that night, in the privacy of their penthouse living room, when she thought Derek wasn't around, she showed her true face. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. Derek had been on his way to grab his phone charger from the dining area when he heard voices. Clarissa and her three closest friends, Shanice, Lola, and Patrice, were sipping wine, their laughter filling the room. Derek paused when he heard his name. "Girl, please," Clarissa scoffed, her tone dripping with arrogance. "I can dump him any time. He's here for a reason. Men like Derek, they think they're in control, but really he's just a wallet I haven't emptied yet." The women burst out laughing. One of them, Shanice, even asked, "So you're not in love with him at all?" Clarissa leaned back, her voice steady, almost proud. "Love, please. Love doesn't pay for vacations, handbags, or rent. He's too blind to see it. He thinks I'm his queen, but I'm just biding my time. When I'm done, he won't even know what hit him." Every word was a dagger. Derek stood there frozen, his chest tightening, his world unraveling in a matter of seconds. 8 years of marriage, wedding vows, late-night talks, the house they built together. It all suddenly felt like a lie. But here's the part that makes Derek's story different. He didn't storm in. He didn't shout. He didn't confront her right there in front of her friends. No, Derek did something far colder. He walked back to the bedroom, silent as a shadow, and sat on the edge of their bed. That's when the idea began to form. You see, Derek wasn't just an ordinary husband. He was a planner by nature. In his career as a real estate strategist, he'd mastered the art of patience, of waiting for the right moment to strike. And now he knew Clarissa's betrayal would not be met with anger. It would be met with something far more devastating. For the rest of the night, he played his role. When Clarissa finally came to bed, he kissed her forehead like nothing happened. She smiled, oblivious. But behind Derek's calm eyes, a storm was already brewing. This was no longer a marriage. This was war. Derek lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, Clarissa's words replaying over and over in his head like a broken record. He's just a wallet I haven't emptied yet. 8 years. 8 years of building, of sacrificing, of dreaming together. And all along she had been performing, an actress in a marriage that was never real. But Derek wasn't the kind of man who acted on impulse. He knew the cost of reckless anger. In real estate, he'd seen how rushing into a deal could ruin fortunes. He'd learned to wait, to watch, to make every move deliberate. And now he realized this wasn't just about heartbreak. This was about justice. By morning, Derek's mind was already mapping the blueprint of his plan. Clarissa, sipping her almond milk latte, scrolled through her phone as if nothing had happened. She looked radiant in her silk robe, smiling at a message from Shanice. To anyone else, she was the picture of elegance. To Derek, she was a ticking clock. "I've been thinking," Derek said casually over breakfast, masking his thoughts behind a calm tone. "Maybe we should expand, buy another property, invest more." Clarissa's eyes lit up. She leaned forward, interested. Money was her love language. "Really? Where?" Derek smiled. "Downtown, something classy. I'll handle the details. You just relax." She grinned, her mind already calculating what she could gain. What she didn't know was that Derek wasn't expanding for her benefit. He was setting the stage. The first step in his revenge was simple: observe. For weeks, Derek pretended everything was normal. He kissed her goodbye in the mornings, sent her flowers at work, even took her on dinner dates. Clarissa had no reason to suspect that he knew. In fact, his extra affection only confirmed her arrogance. She thought he was still blindly in love. But behind that mask, Derek was quietly pulling strings. He started with finances. Every shared account they had, he began restructuring. Slowly, carefully, he moved assets into places only he could access. He rerouted his paychecks, shifted investments, and rewrote contracts on their properties. On paper, Clarissa was still part of everything. In reality, her grip was slipping one silent inch at a time. Next, he turned to her circle. Clarissa's friends thought they were safe laughing in his living room. They underestimated Derek's patience. At dinners, he listened more than he spoke. He studied their dynamics, the subtle glances, the inside jokes. He noted how Patrice often asked about his business, how Shanice was always broke yet living lavishly. Clarissa's friends weren't just her allies, they were potential weaknesses. One evening, Derek tested the waters. As Clarissa chattered about a shopping spree, Derek leaned in and said softly, "You know, Clarissa, I'd trust you with everything I own." She smiled smugly, not realizing it was bait. "And you should," she replied, twirling her wine glass. "You've got a good woman." Derek nodded, hiding the smirk that almost surfaced. She believed her own performance so deeply she didn't notice the trap forming under her feet. But here's where fate played its part. Derek wasn't the only one hiding secrets. One late evening, while organizing paperwork, Derek found a clue: an unfamiliar credit card bill addressed to Clarissa. The charges were outrageous: luxury boutiques, hotels, and spa visits he hadn't approved. One hotel in particular stood out. Derek froze. The dates matched nights when Clarissa had claimed to be at girls' dinners. The betrayal was deeper than money. It wasn't just greed. It was deceit on every level. And that's when Derek made a decision. This wouldn't just be financial revenge, no. This would be total. He would dismantle her world piece by piece, until Clarissa had no crown left to wear. Clarissa believed she was untouchable. Her friends praised her for playing the game, and she wore that pride like perfume. But what Clarissa didn't know was that every move she made was being watched, every step calculated by a husband she thought was blind. The first visible crack came during a family gathering. Derek's younger sister, Maya, had always been skeptical of Clarissa. She was outspoken, sharp-tongued, and fiercely protective of her brother. That evening, as relatives filled Derek's loft with laughter and the aroma of roasted chicken, Maya noticed something odd. Clarissa wasn't acting like a wife. She was performing like a celebrity. Every compliment directed at Derek, about his recent property deals, his generosity, his success. Clarissa redirected back to herself. "Well, I encouraged him to make that move," she said with a smirk. Or, "Honestly, he wouldn't be where he is without me." Maya raised a brow but said nothing. Derek caught her eye across the room, a silent acknowledgement. For once, Maya didn't press. She could tell Derek was holding something in. Later that night, as guests left, Clarissa slipped into the bedroom to check her phone. Derek lingered by the doorway, watching her reflection in the mirror. She was smiling at her screen. Too much. A smile reserved for someone else. "Good night, babe," Derek said softly. She startled slightly, then forced a yawn. Night. But Derek saw through it. He always had. The second crack appeared with money. A few days later, Clarissa came rushing into the kitchen, frustration etched across her face. "Derek, did you move the funds from our joint account? The balance is less than it should be." Derek looked up from his coffee, feigning confusion. "Really? That's odd. Maybe it's a bank error. I'll check with them." Clarissa studied his face, searching for guilt, but Derek gave her nothing. She nodded slowly, pretending to believe him, though her tightened grip on her coffee mug betrayed her nerves. Behind the scenes, Derek had already moved thousands into accounts she didn't know existed. Slowly, he was draining the pool she thought she'd dive into when her scam was complete. The third crack came from her own arrogance. One Friday night, Clarissa insisted on going out with Shanice and Patrice. She dressed to impress, red heels, diamond earrings Derek had bought her, and a dress that left little to the imagination. Derek didn't stop her. Instead, he offered a warm smile. "Have fun. Text me if you need anything." Clarissa smirked. "Don't wait up." But Derek wasn't waiting up. He was following. From a distance, he watched as Clarissa and her friends entered a downtown hotel lobby, laughter echoing as they disappeared into the elevator. Derek's jaw tightened. He didn't need to see more. The truth was already loud enough. That night, sitting in his car outside the hotel, Derek's plan shifted gears. He had evidence. He had motive. But more importantly, he had patience. If Clarissa thought she could play him, she was about to discover what it meant to be outplayed. The next morning, Clarissa breezed into the kitchen, sunglasses covering her tired eyes. She kissed Derek on the cheek, her tone playful. Late night. Girls' dinner ran long. Derek smiled, sliding a plate of pancakes toward her. "I trust you." She smirked, not realizing the double edge of those words. Because trust was the one thing Derek no longer had for her. What he had instead was strategy. And soon, Clarissa's castle of lies would start collapsing, stone by stone. Derek knew timing was everything. He couldn't just strike. He had to let Clarissa believe she was in control, let her arrogance grow so high that her fall would be catastrophic. The first stage of his plan wasn't financial, it was psychological. He started by giving her freedom. More freedom than she ever expected. "Babe, you should go out more," Derek suggested one evening, handing her the keys to the new car he had recently purchased. "Have fun. Enjoy yourself. I've got late meetings anyway." Clarissa's eyes sparkled. Freedom without suspicion? It was exactly what she wanted. She hugged him tightly, not realizing his generosity was bait. The more freedom she had, the bolder she became. Clarissa started coming home late, sometimes not at all, always armed with flimsy excuses. Derek never questioned her. In fact, he seemed supportive. "I trust you," he'd repeat with a soft smile. Those words made her careless. But while Clarissa thought she was living her best life, Derek was documenting everything. Every hotel receipt, every late-night withdrawal, every text message that pinged her phone when she left it unattended. He wasn't just watching, he was building a case. The second stage of Derek's plan involved social isolation. Clarissa thrived on her friends. Shanice, Lola, and Patrice weren't just companions. They were her audience, the ones who fed her ego. Derek understood that if you wanted to collapse a queen's power, you first removed her court. So he got to work, quietly. At Shanice's birthday party, Derek arrived alone, claiming Clarissa was too tired to join. He charmed everyone, bought rounds of drinks, and listened more than he spoke. By the end of the night, he had planted subtle doubts about Clarissa. Nothing direct, just hints. "She's been really stressed lately, spending a lot of time away. I just hope she's okay." The comments spread like wildfire. Within weeks, whispers about Clarissa's strange behavior began circulating. Her friends, who once worshipped her confidence, started questioning her loyalty. The third stage was emotional manipulation. One night, Derek returned home with flowers. He set them on the dining table and cooked dinner, a rare gesture for him. Clarissa, surprised, asked, "What's the occasion?" He looked her straight in the eye. "No occasion. I just love you, that's all." Her smile faltered for a moment, then returned. "Well, that's sweet." But deep down, she felt a flicker of unease. Why now? Why was he being so affectionate? Clarissa didn't know it, but Derek's kindness was calculated. It wasn't love. It was guilt's shadow he was casting onto her, making her second-guess herself. The cracks began to widen. Clarissa's friends no longer seemed as close. One by one, they started canceling plans. Derek's consistent kindness made her uneasy, and the joint account she once depended on now felt unreliable. But Clarissa still believed she held the upper hand. She thought Derek was clueless. She thought she was invincible, until the night Derek staged his first reveal. It was subtle, just a test. As Clarissa prepared for another girls' dinner, Derek handed her a folded envelope. "In case you need it," he said gently. Inside was a hotel receipt, the very hotel she had stayed at 3 nights ago. Clarissa froze, her smile stiffening. "What's this?" she asked, forcing a laugh. Derek leaned closer, his voice calm, deliberate. "Just a reminder, Clarissa. Every secret leaves a trail." And with that, he kissed her cheek and walked away. That night, Clarissa didn't go to her dinner. She sat in the living room, staring at the receipt, her hands trembling. For the first time, she realized something terrifying. Derek knew, and he wasn't angry. He was patient, which made him far more dangerous. The envelope had done its job. For the first time in years, Clarissa looked rattled. She moved around the house differently, nervous glances over her shoulder, longer pauses when Derek spoke, shorter phone calls with her friends. She still dressed up, still left the house in her heels and perfume, but something about her strut had softened. Derek noticed, and he knew it was time for the next phase. The financial noose. On a bright Monday morning, Derek called their bank. Calmly, politely, he froze every joint account they shared. Credit cards, savings, even the emergency fund Clarissa had once boasted about managing. Locked. On paper, it looked like a technical glitch. In reality, it was Derek's calculated strike. By Thursday, Clarissa stormed into his office at home, her tone sharp. "Derek, what the hell is going on? My card got declined at Saks today. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" Derek looked up from his laptop with practiced innocence. "Really? That's strange. Banks have been glitchy lately. Don't worry, I'll handle it." Her eyes narrowed. She studied his calm face, trying to read him. But Derek had built walls thicker than steel. He simply smiled and went back to typing. Clarissa left the room fuming, but inside she was panicking. For a woman who thrived on appearances, financial humiliation was worse than anything else. The next strike came socially. Derek had learned one simple truth. Clarissa's strength came from her image. Her friends admired her for her lifestyle, her beauty, her supposed perfect marriage. Take that away, and she'd crumble. At a Sunday brunch hosted by Maya, Derek played his part to perfection. He arrived hand in hand with Clarissa, smiling like the doting husband. Halfway through the meal, as laughter echoed around the table, Derek leaned in and said gently, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "I really don't know how I'd survive without Clarissa. Even when times get tough, I trust her with everything." The room fell quiet for a moment. Eyes darted toward Clarissa, whose forced smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Derek's words weren't suspicious on the surface, but to anyone listening closely, there was weight behind them. After brunch, Maya pulled Clarissa aside. "Everything okay between you two?" she asked, her tone firm. Clarissa scoffed. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" But Maya's sharp eyes didn't miss the tremor in her voice. Within days, rumors began to spread. Quietly, subtly. Clarissa's friends, once her cheerleaders, started pulling away. Invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unanswered. Even Shanice, her most loyal accomplice, began distancing herself. Clarissa felt the shift. One night, she confronted Derek. "Did you say something to them? Why are my friends acting different?" she demanded. Derek looked at her with a softness that only deepened her confusion. "Clarissa, sometimes people drift apart. Maybe they're busy. Don't worry. You'll always have me." Those words, "You'll always have me," echoed like poison in her ears. Because deep down, she knew they weren't a promise. They were a warning. And then came the breaking point. One afternoon, Clarissa returned from shopping, this time with cheap handbags instead of designer ones. As she entered the penthouse, she noticed movers carrying boxes. Her eyes widened. "Derek, what's going on? Who are these people?" Derek, calm as ever, signed a paper and turned to her. "Oh, nothing serious, just rearranging assets, moving some things out of the joint property into my private holdings. You know, just being cautious." Her breath caught. For the first time, real fear flickered in her eyes. Are you leaving me?" Derek tilted his head, studying her the way a chess player studies a queen about to be cornered. "Clarissa," he said slowly, "I would never leave you, unless you gave me a reason." And then, without another word, he walked away, leaving her trembling in the doorway, surrounded by half-empty boxes. That night, Clarissa barely slept. For years, she had believed she controlled the marriage, but now, for the first time, she realized she wasn't holding the strings anymore. Derek was, and he was tightening them. Clarissa always believed appearances could save her. As long as she looked flawless, as long as her friends envied her life, she could hide the cracks in her marriage. But Derek had learned her secret weapon, and he was about to turn it against her. It started at a dinner party, hosted by one of Derek's business partners. The room buzzed with polished laughter, the clink of wine glasses and the low hum of a jazz band. Clarissa had dressed to impress. Emerald gown, glittering heels, hair perfectly coiffed. She smiled at every guest, dazzling as always. Halfway through the evening, Derek stood to make a toast. "To loyalty," he said, raising his glass. "In business, in friendship, and most importantly, in marriage. Because without loyalty, everything else crumbles." The room clapped politely, but eyes turned toward Clarissa. She smiled tightly, her fingers gripping the stem of her glass. She knew that toast wasn't about business. It was about her. Later, as they mingled, Derek casually dropped comments to the right ears. To a colleague, "Marriage isn't about luxury, it's about trust. Though trust is sometimes the hardest thing to hold on to." To a family friend, "You never really know someone until you see what they do when they think you aren't watching." No names, no accusations, just enough to plant seeds of suspicion. By the end of the night, whispers followed Clarissa like shadows. The next strike came more direct. One afternoon, Derek invited Maya over for coffee. He placed a folder on the table between them. Inside were receipts, hotel bookings, luxury purchases on the secret card, and screenshots of flirtatious messages Clarissa had carelessly left open. Maya's eyes widened as she flipped through the evidence. "Derek, you've known all this time?" Derek nodded calmly. "And I'm not done. I don't want to just expose her. I want her to feel it." Maya leaned back, her jaw tight. "She's been mocking you behind your back for years. She deserves everything coming." Together, they began planning how to dismantle Clarissa's image from the inside out. The unraveling began the following weekend. Clarissa had organized a brunch with a few remaining friends determined to prove nothing was wrong. She wore pearls, her best smile, and kept the conversation flowing with her usual flair. Halfway through, Derek arrived late. He greeted everyone warmly, kissed Clarissa's cheek, then, without warning, pulled a hotel receipt from his jacket pocket and set it on the table. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said smoothly. "Had to clear up a little mix-up with the bank. Turns out my wife's been handling some expenses I wasn't aware of. But hey, marriage is about trust, right?" The table fell silent. Clarissa's face drained of color. She forced a laugh. "Oh, that's just a mistake. I can explain." But her friends were already exchanging looks. Derek didn't press. He just smiled, leaned back in his chair, and let the silence do the work. That night, Clarissa confronted him, trembling with rage. "Why would you humiliate me like that? In front of my friends?" Derek's voice was calm, almost tender. "I didn't humiliate you, Clarissa. I just showed them a glimpse of the truth. The rest, you've been doing yourself." She stood there speechless, her chest heaving. For once she had no comeback, no charm to hide behind. And that's when the fear truly set in. Because Clarissa finally realized that Derek wasn't just exposing her. He was dismantling her world piece by piece. And he was far from finished. The silence at brunch had been Clarissa's first real taste of public humiliation, but Derek knew she hadn't reached her breaking point yet. A woman like Clarissa, so obsessed with image, with status, needed her downfall to be witnessed. She had built her life around applause. To destroy her, Derek would make sure the world stopped clapping. The opportunity came faster than expected. Derek's company was hosting a charity gala, a glittering event filled with high society, investors, and family. Clarissa loved galas. They were her stage. She spent hours choosing a gown, rehearsing her smile, even practicing her speech for when people asked about their perfect marriage. But Derek had a different script. That night, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, champagne flowed, and cameras flashed as Clarissa clung to Derek's arm like she had never betrayed him. She greeted guests, laughed at jokes, and posed for photos, looking every bit the elegant wife. Halfway through the evening, Derek took the stage. He thanked donors, praised his team, and then, with a practiced smile, shifted the subject. "There's something I've learned about loyalty," he began, his voice calm but steady. "It's not just about business. It's about who stands beside you when no one is watching. And sometimes the people we trust most turn out to be wearing masks." A ripple went through the crowd. Clarissa's smile froze, her knuckles tightening around her champagne glass. Derek continued, "I won't go into too much detail tonight, but I will say this. Betrayal doesn't break a strong man. It sharpens him. And when the truth comes out, it always sets you free." The audience clapped politely, intrigued, but unsettled. But the real damage wasn't in Derek's words. It was in the way eyes shifted toward Clarissa, whispers spreading like wildfire. She felt it. Her mask was slipping, and everyone was watching. After the speech, Derek mingled effortlessly, while Clarissa struggled to keep her composure. Maya, standing nearby, delivered the final dagger with a simple comment whispered just loud enough for others to overhear. "It's always the ones who brag about their perfect life who have the darkest secrets." Clarissa's world tilted. In one night, the admiration she had thrived on turned into suspicion. When they returned home, she snapped. "You're destroying me, Derek," she screamed, pacing the living room. "Do you think you'll come out of this clean? People will blame you too." But Derek just sat calmly, unbothered. "No, Clarissa. They'll see the truth eventually. And the truth is, you built your life on lies. I'm just removing the stage lights so everyone else can see what I've been seeing all along." She froze, tears stinging her eyes. For years, she had believed she controlled the marriage, the money, the image. But now, everything was slipping. Her friends, her finances, her reputation. And Derek wasn't yelling, wasn't fighting. His silence, his patience, that was worse than any outburst. The next morning, Clarissa woke up to another blow. Her phone buzzed with messages, screenshots of rumors circulating online. Someone had leaked her lavish spending, her hotel stays, her questionable behavior. Her friends weren't defending her. They were distancing themselves. Clarissa sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, as Derek walked past her with his briefcase. He paused at the door and said quietly, "We're almost done here, Clarissa. Almost." And with that, he left her sitting in silence, surrounded by the crumbling walls of the empire she thought she controlled. Clarissa's empire had collapsed. Her friends had abandoned her, whispers poisoned her reputation, and the wealth she had counted on was gone. But Derek knew the final blow wasn't about money or gossip. The real destruction would come from truth, and he had been saving it for the perfect moment. 3 weeks after the gala, Derek invited Clarissa's closest family and a few mutual friends to their penthouse. Clarissa assumed it was a reconciliation attempt, a way to repair the cracks. She dressed carefully, put on a soft smile, and prepared her speech about rebuilding trust. But when she entered the living room, her heart sank. Everyone's eyes were cold, suspicious. Maya was there, Derek's parents. Even Shanice, sitting awkwardly with her gaze fixed on the floor. Derek stood at the center of the room, calm, collected, a folder in his hand. "Clarissa," he began, his tone steady. "You've told people I'm your world, that we're unshakable. But what you didn't know is, I've been listening." He opened the folder. Out came receipts, screenshots, credit card statements, and then, the recording. "I can dump him any time. He's here for a reason." Clarissa's voice filled the room, mocking, cruel, dripping with arrogance. Laughter from that night with her friends echoed through the speakers. Gasps filled the room. Shanice buried her face in her hands. Maya crossed her arms, triumphant. Clarissa staggered backward, her face pale, lips trembling. "Derek, please," she whispered. But he didn't stop. "For 8 years I gave you everything, my trust, my love, my loyalty. And you used me. You lied to everyone here, parading me as your trophy while plotting to destroy me behind closed doors. But tonight, it ends." The room was silent, the weight of the evidence undeniable. Clarissa's parents, humiliated, couldn't even look at her. Friends whispered. Her perfect image shattered like glass on the floor. But Derek wasn't done. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a single envelope. Handing it to her, he said calmly, "This is your exit. The divorce papers are signed. You'll leave with nothing, because everything you thought you had is already gone." Clarissa's hand shook as she opened it. The reality hit. She had no accounts left, no properties in her name, no safety net. Everything she had schemed for had slipped through her fingers. Tears streamed down her face as she sank into the couch. "You planned this from the start?" Derek's eyes were cold, but his voice was steady. "No, Clarissa. I planned this the night I realized the woman I married never existed." The gathering ended in silence. Clarissa sat broken, abandoned by the very people who once admired her. Derek walked out with his family, leaving her in the ruins of her lies. That night, as he stood on his balcony overlooking the city, Derek felt no joy, no triumph, only peace. He hadn't needed to raise his voice or his hands. He hadn't needed violence. He had simply given Clarissa the one thing she never wanted, the truth, exposed for everyone to see. Betrayal doesn't just destroy trust, it destroys the betrayer. Greed, arrogance, and lies may last for a while, but patience and truth will always outlast them. Because in the end, no one can scam love. And Derek had proven that the strongest revenge isn't rage, it's silence, patience, and letting the truth do the killing.